Okay, so what a movie that was. Last House on the Left from 1972, I believe the horror film directorial debut of good old Wes Craven, and it was also produced, I believe, and maybe co-written by Sean Cunningham. So you have two kind of 80s horror greats getting their start with an incredibly low budget exploitation movie. I mean, if this is an exploitation film, if this isn't an exploitation film, I don't know what is. This is literally the personification, the epitome of the horror exploitation genre, because this shit was ridiculous. But yeah, Sean S. Cunningham produced, Wes Craven directed. Obviously, Craven did, Hills Have Eyes. He did Swamp Thing. He did Nightmare on Elm Street. Sean S. Cunningham obviously did Friday the 13th. Are any of their aspects in here? Not really. However, Last House on the Left does take place in the woods, which is cool. Always love that setting. One thing I will say, going into it, right, I always like to, kind of spew on what I know about a movie prior to watching it. And basically the only thing I knew about this movie was that it's a cult classic. It's an exploitation movie. It's incredibly low budget. It was directed by Wes Craven, and it's just like kind of gross, kind of grimy, really rough around the edges. And that, I believe, stays true after watching it, all right? Because, God, is this movie not for everybody, all right? Absolutely not. I'm going to come out right now. I would not recommend this to anybody unless they're a horror movie fan, just because it is appalling. Wow, like this movie is actually disturbing, right? Like on several different fronts. And I'm couldn't even imagine, with the budget of this movie being what, like 80 something thousand dollars. I'm sure the filmmaking measures that they took with that budget, I can't even imagine. I mean, if Texas Chainsaw Massacre was bad, I can't even imagine what this was like. Obviously, they were in the desert. This not so much, but when there is all this horror and anguish on some of these actresses' faces throughout the movie, I feel like might not be there might be a 5% of authenticity in there. And so the concept, I don't really understand the Last House on the Left concept. I really don't. I tried to pay attention, obviously. So it centers around this girl and her friend are going to a concert. Her parents are like kind of hesitant about her going, A, because they don't really like her friend, and B, she's like just turned 17, and like she's going to, like, it's basically Woodstock, right? Like it's like in upstate New York, and it's just this big festival. I forget what the band's called, but anyway, her and her friend take off to go. They want to smoke some weed, and they're desperate, and so they see one of the four, I guess, psychopaths that are like band together and are our antagonists for this movie. They get lured inside, kidnapped, gang raped, tortured, ran through the mud, literally, ran through piss, literally. I mean, good God. I mean, the premise is very basic, right? And if you were to explain this to, if I were to explain this to a friend, if I were to explain this to somebody who wasn't really a horror fan, or even I would consider a passionate horror fan, they would probably be like, I don't want to watch that. Like, if I said it's super low budget, it's gory, it's disturbing, and I just gave them that little plot summary or whatever, they would not want to watch it. And I don't really blame them. But I do think, similar to Sugar Hill Gang, this is kind of not a rapper's delight, but kind of a horror fan's delight, in a really sick, demented, fucked up way. Because I think that this movie, based on the budget and how early on, I mean, this had to be, without a doubt, a huge moment of influence for Tobe Hooper in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and countless other exploitation horror movies. I'm sure Maniac borrowed from this movie, Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, House of a Thousand Corpses. I mean, all of those movies I've seen definitely take something from this. Mother's Day, you know? And, like, these movies are fucked up. They are, all right? And they are not for the faint of the heart. I don't recommend this to anybody, to everybody. I recommend this to a very small subset of people. But I think that very small subset of people are going to appreciate it and are going to kind of see it for more than what it actually is, right? I would say the biggest strengths of this movie are during the heat of the intensities of various parts of the movies. Whenever the girl escapes, one of the girls escapes and they're chasing her, and also towards the end of the movie, honestly, just as soon as the couple find out that these guys they let into their house are the ones who raped and murdered their daughter, it really starts to, like, I kind of get out of my cynical, like, I'm watching a movie mood, and I'm like, I want to see what happens here. I want to see if A, they get away, if B, you know, or if B, in the other circumstance, if they can actually defeat these bad guys, right? Because, you know, this movie was like an hour and like 40 minutes or something, and it didn't drag. It was fine. The pacing was perfectly okay. But, you know, that middle part where there's the chase scene, you can definitely tell it's a very low budget movie. And, you know, they spent a lot of the camera angles are kind of shaky and really amateur, and I think that's kind of a good thing, though. I think it really adds to the gritty, just, God, nasty fucking vibe of this movie. I mean, this movie it'll make your stomach turn. It will make your stomach turn. You know, I think in particular the scene where Krug, who is the ringleader, if you will, of this group of 4 escaped convicts that are all murderers and rapists, after he rapes the girl Mary, and he's like slobbering on her cheek, and like I can see, I don't know, it just, the look on her face, the character is disgusted, but I think she was disgusted. She was like, what am I doing? And like that resonated, it sent fucking chills down my spine. It was fucking gross, and it was just, but, you know, I was talking about, what movie was it? I think it was The Fog, maybe, where I was like, this is a well-made movie, but it's not really something that I enjoy plot-wise. I would say, in the same vein, Last House on the Left is a well-made movie for exploitation genre, for sure. I think it's a founding father. You know, if Halloween is the founding father of the slasher genre, I think Last House on the Left is the founding father of the, you know, exploitation, survival, psycho rapist movie. You know, The Mother's Day, The Hills Have Eyes, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, movies like that. You know, House of a Thousand Corpses, Devil's Rejects. And so I can I feel dirty for saying I enjoy this movie, but I did. I really did. There were some things that kind of bothered me, but the things that bothered me, I feel like it can be labeled a bit of a nitpick by virtue of, like, the budget was so low that, like, you had to expect. You know, I thought the gore effects were fine. I thought they looked pretty good. I mean, you know, this is early 70s, so there weren't a lot of, like, full-on, like, decapitations or anything like that. But I thought the gore was fine. The sound design, or whatever you want to call, just in general, the music and stuff, that was probably, that stuck out like a sore thumb. That was definitely my biggest issue, because there were points where, like, the music was just so corny. Like, basically when Mary, I believe, or Phyllis, one of them is in the cemetery, it would be Phyllis, and, you know, she's almost to the road, and then all of a sudden she, like, turns around and boom, there's Krug, and it's just like this really cringy, like piano stroke, and then, like, it just, it's so, like, you expect, like, she turns and then there's another piano stroke and you see more people, but it's just really horribly executed. That part is like, it's whatever, but, you know, and that's, it's hard to rate this because it was both entertaining but also groundbreaking. You know what I mean? Because you watch a movie like Halloween, right? As an adult, and you're like, oh, that movie's not nearly as intense, or not this or that, but you're like, well, this thing literally laid the groundwork for so many movies, so you have to kind of take that in consideration. And I feel like that's what I'm saying with this movie. The main character Krug, he reminded me a lot of the head honcho, if you will. I don't remember his name. Is it Pluto? I don't know. I love Hills Have Eyes. It's one of my favorite movies. I should know that. Jupiter? No, not Papa Jupe. He reminded me of the guy. I thought he was played by the same actor. Honestly, I was shocked. I had to look it up because they looked so similar. But they indeed are not played by the same guy. But Krug, I will say, he is a fucking disgusting, nasty antagonist. But in this movie, it works. And his raunchy fucking disdain for human life and just women and just being a grotesque sick son of a bitch that deserves to have his fucking dick ripped off and thrown in a meat grinder while he sits there and watches in agony. It works for this movie. It does. But I remember in particular, where did they shave, right? Like, so obviously the movie's split up in two parts, right? Or I guess you could say three. You have the initial build up to where the girls get kidnapped. Then you have the part of the movie where they're kind of getting tortured in the woods. And then obviously the third and final act, I guess, is, they go into Mary's parents' house and, the parents eventually find out, and then it's like a good versus evil showdown. How the fuck? Hold up. And I had to go back and check, and I was like, what? How did they happen? Of all of the places, how did they manage to get back to Mary's house? What the fuck are the odds of that? Are you kidding me? That she lives in rural middle of the bumfuck nowhere. That is one of the biggest fucking plot conveniences I've ever seen in any movie. Straight up. Like, that shit is insane. And like the cops as well. What the fuck? What the actual fuck? Like that, like those are two parts of the movie where I'm like, this can't be real. Like this, that's how you know this is a fucking movie. Like, this cannot be grounded in reality. Like, you have two of the biggest bumblefuck cops imaginable, right? That scene with the black lady with the truck bed full of chickens, fucking hilarious. Also the scene where I believe it's Steve Miner in the front, where they like stop to like, it's like this big group of people. I think they were coming back from the concert and they like pull over. They call them fucking pigs and then they run off on them. Fucking amazing, this movie had a lot of charm to it. Right, this movie had a lot of charm to it, and for as fucking grotesque and nasty and like hard to watch parts that this had, I will say I would absolutely watch this again. I'm a sick fuck, what can I say? But I actually like Roger Ebert. I was very interested to see what he had to say about this. He gave it like a 3.5 out of 4, which is like, if you're looking at it as a horror movie, I think that's a pretty applicable score. I'm gonna be honest with you, man. I'm gonna be honest with you. No, the ending of the movie obviously is my favorite part, because it becomes less of a sadistic torture rape movie, and kind of a bit of a rape revenge film in a way. I guess you could consider it, where we have Junior, who is the guy who actually tricked the two girls in the first place. So he's not guilty here. He's not innocent in all this, but he's fucking waxed out on heroin or whatever. And then obviously we got Krug, and we got Weasel, I believe his name is, who looks like fucking the guy from Seinfeld. Like, weird looking dude. Like, he just does not fit with those people. And also, one thing that kind of separates this group of maniacs, if you will, is there's a woman in their group. There is a woman in their group, and I think that changes up the dynamic a little bit. And also, something I want to talk about towards the end here. Shout out to the mother. The mother is probably my favorite character in the movie because she is a badass bitch. She took one for the fucking team. She bit the motherfucker's dick off, right? Like the death scenes of the four of them, awesome. Well, Junior shoots himself, kind of whatever. His character was just whacked out the whole time, like whatever. But there was you had the little bit of a cat fight going on between the mother. Once again, love her. She's my favorite character in the movie, straight up. I will say Krug is a badass villain, though. I mean, he definitely he did a great job. I think the acting in this movie was pretty damn good. The women, Phyllis and Mary, respectively, there were some moments where it was like, ooh, but at the same time, those bitches went through hell. I mean, good God, I can't even imagine like having to piss their pants. I'm sure that's authentic. You know what I mean? With a movie this low budget, I'm sure they didn't, account for fake pee. They're probably just like, all right, you're an actress, pee your pants. I mean, but no, I don't know what the hell what was her name like. I don't know what her name was, what the wife's name was, but Estelle maybe, Eleanor, some shit. But no, she gets in the freaking cat fight with Sadie, the woman. She bites Weasel, the guy's dick off. Like, she seduces him, drags him into the yard, like, low-key, like, on some, there's something about some Mary shit, like, zips his dick up in the zipper. Kind of, like, kills his manhood, calls his dick small, and then just fucking wonks on that shit. And I guess he dies. So, which is fitting. I mean, he's a piece of shit. They're all pieces of shit. Those four individuals, with the exception of Junior, because he's just kind of just a druggy junkie. He didn't necessarily do anything too bad. Obviously, he's definitely not innocent in all this, because he's literally the one that got the ball rolling. But the other three of them are awful, horrible human beings that deserve the world of pain that they inevitably get. But yeah, she fucking bites his dick off, and he fucking like bleeds out, I guess, because you don't really see him after that. And then, obviously the mother then seeks out the woman who tries to escape out of the house, because the father and Krug kind of get into it, and their showdown is interesting. Krug is I will say, he's a badass villain. He is quite the fighter. He took those punches like a fucking man. I will say he's a smooth criminal, quite literally. I definitely got like real, like, this guy is kind of not a badass, but like I wouldn't want to fuck with this guy because he's a fucking psychopath. And based on how they were able to mosey their way into staying the night, like posing as like traveling salesman, like that was fucking crazy. Like when that part happened, I did not expect that part. Everything that had happened in the movie up until that point made sense, and was like, okay, I can kind of understand how this is happening and like whatever in this movie, Last House on the Left. But that point was a complete shakeup, and I really liked that. I really did appreciate that part of the movie. But no, and she slits her neck in the pool. Pretty fucking awesome. As far as Krug's death, there's the big long back and forth with the gun. It's whatever. He ultimately gets the booby traps set up by the dad were kind of fun. That was kind of cool. But he gets like the chainsaw in the nuts, which is a fitting way to go, as he deserves. He legitimately should get the worst possible and most painful death you could imagine. And I can't really think of much worse. But it's funny. Of course, as soon as everybody dies, bad guys wise, the police show up. Go fucking figure. That's kind of a bit of a trope, I guess. And the police were terrible in this movie as far as like their operating, and they were just so incompetent. Like it was kind of amazing. It was comical. They were definitely the comic relief in this movie because they could not do their fucking job. All they wanted to do was goddamn drink Dr. Pepper and bumblefuck around and not check the goddamn gas gauge and run out of gas whenever they're trying to hunt fucking serial rapists and murderers, where they literally see the car and they're like, uh, this random car on the side of the road in the middle of bumfuck nowhere outside of the house of a woman who's fucking missing with the hood up and like clearly there's something wrong. No, let's not check that out. Let's get the fuck out of here because we aren't freaking happy with the way this family's treating me because they're pissed because their child's missing and there's nothing I can do about it and they're taking out their anger out of me. Like, oh no, let's just go back to the station. They're awful. They're shitty. Anyway. No, this movie definitely exceeded my expectations. I was expecting kind of a similar vibe to maybe just an older movie that was laid the groundwork for a whole genre and a whole like subcategory of horror films, and I think that's exactly what this movie is. But there's also more to it. I think there's a lot of fascinating and gruesome and if you're a horrorphile or if you're a horror cinephile, I think there's a lot to enjoy here, especially and also if you're just a fan of kind of like amateur filmmaking as well. I think that this movie has a lot to offer. I cannot recommend this to friends. I can't recommend this to family. I can't really recommend this to anybody unless they are, like I said, a horror fan slash maybe a film fan. Because it is definitely speaks volumes to Wes Craven as a filmmaker early on, as well as just some of the early days of exploitation horror movies. But yeah, I would absolutely recommend this to a horror fan. You know, if they like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or if they like Hills Have Eyes, then I would assume that they would find some good things to say about this movie. But it ain't for the faint of the heart, man. It is intense, it's fucked up, it's disturbing, it's gross, and it is raunchy as hell, and it is grimy as fuck. But I'm gonna say I'm gonna give it a 4. I'm gonna give it a 4.5 out of 5. I can't quite give it that 5, just because it's a little too much at times. Like I said, there were literally some points where I was like, bruh. Like, this is gross. Like I'm saying, like, after he rapes her and he like is like getting a little bit of like post-nut clarity, and there are some weird moments, by the way, where like they kind of just let her walk off, and there were definitely some moments where I was like, either A, run, or B, fucking scream, where I feel like they could have found a way to maybe not fix their situation, but like the 4 people who were overpowering were not, especially once Homeboy had fled to the car to get the suitcase or whatever, they could have escaped. That's all I'm gonna say. But anyway, no, I'm gonna give it a 4.5 out of 5. I don't think it's quite 5 out of 5 classic, but it definitely is a horror cult classic. I think if you were to I think it's comparable to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I really do. I love the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think I like it more just because of the atmosphere and stuff. Because I don't think that... I don't really understand the whole last house on the left thing. I mean, there's no real indicator that the house is on the left. And also, like, the last house, you'd think it'd be, like, in a neighborhood, but it's not really... I don't know. I don't really understand the title. And there, you know, this plot conveniences are insane. So it's not perfect. I don't think I could give it a 5 out of 5. However, as a horror fan, as a film fan, as somebody who likes Wes Craven, I thought this was definitely similar to how Maniac is for Tom Savini's special effect work. I think that this is a shining badge on the horror, the horror. What was it? Boy Scout tunic for Wes Craven. I don't know. It's a horror exploitation. It's the best. It is a horror exploitation classic. 4.5 out of 5. I fuck with it. Ugh. I gotta take a bath though. A shower.